Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So over the past few years, we've seen cost of living adjustment increases of 5.9%, 8.7%, and 3.2%. However, next year's cost of living adjustment increase could be much less than those three numbers, which obviously would be pretty disappointing, but we're going to be examining why this may actually not be that big of a disappointment. Plus, today is Super Tuesday, so by the end of today, at some point tonight, we might have that rematch once again solidified of Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. But before we go ahead and dive into the main content of today's video, if you wouldn't mind helping me out real quickly by just giving this video a like, that just helps out with the good old YouTube algorithm, and also consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already. Plus, if you would like to receive up to $10,000 in free stocks or $10,000 in free cash, in a pinned comment below, I will be leaving a link to Moomoo. All you have to do is once you click on that link is just sign up for a free account and then deposit at least $100. At that point, Moomoo will be sending you at least 5 free stocks worth, once again, all the way up to $10,000. And if you'd rather just have the cash, all you have to do is once you receive those free stocks is just sell them for what they're worth and then transfer the cash value right back to your bank account. Okay, so diving right into our lead story of today's video. And as I just mentioned earlier on in the intro, is that over the past few years, Social Security beneficiaries have received pretty high cost of living adjustment increases. It's been 5.9%, 8.7%, and then of course this year's was 3.2%. The 8.7% increase was the highest in right around 40 years, so the increases have been pretty good over the past few years. And although some people could make the argument that inflation has been much higher than what the cost of living adjustments have been, so for example, last year when it was 8.7%, some people have made the argument that it really should have been closer to 15 or perhaps even 20% because inflation was so much higher than 8.7% across the board. But all in all, it's been pretty good. But pretty much what they're saying right now, at least according to certain projections, is that the cost of living adjustment next year in 2025 is going to be much, much less than what we've been receiving over the past couple of years. However, we're going to be examining why this may not actually be that bad of a thing. So, according to the Motley Fool, many seniors inevitably wind up in a position where they're forced to largely live on Social Security. That's not ideal though, because those benefits will only replace about 40% of an average earner's pre-retirement wages, and seniors commonly need a lot more income than that to live comfortably. But still, that doesn't change the fact that many retirees today are extremely reliant on Social Security, and as such, they're reliant on generous cost of living adjustments or COLAs so that their benefit gets enough of a boost each year to keep pace with inflation. In 2023, Social Security recipients received a whopping 8.7% COLA, the largest to arrive in decades, in response to the rampant inflation that battered consumers in 2022. This year's COLA was notably smaller at 3.2%, but significant nonetheless. But recently, the nonpartisan Senior Citizens League put out an estimate for 2025 Social Security COLA, and it's a number that may not sit so well with seniors. So they said that next year's COLA could come in at under 2%. They say, let's get one thing out of the way. It's too soon to really produce an accurate estimate of next year's Social Security COLA because that data is determined based on the third quarter inflation data. Since we're still in the midst of the first quarter of the year, any projections that come out at this point are really just educated guesses. That said, based on January's reading of the Consumer Price Index for Urban Wage Earners and Clerical Workers, or CPIW, the Senior Citizens League is estimating that 2025's Social Security COLA at 1.75%. However, the group itself says that next year's final COLA is likely to be a little bit different. Either way, though, it is likely that seniors on Social Security will be in line for a smaller COLA in 2025 than in 2024, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because COLAs are pegged to inflation, a smaller COLA is indicative of more moderate consumer costs. To put it in another way, seniors on Social Security might see their benefits go up a bit less next year, but if they're also not struggling to pay for food and gas and other essentials because prices have cooled, then that alone might serve as a greater source of financial relief. So certainly they do make a pretty good point there that if the cost of living adjustment is a little bit lower, if we're not continuing to receive these 8+ percentage points in cost of living adjustment increases, that also means that prices at the grocery store, at the gas station, and other places across the board aren't also going up as high as well. So that's going to certainly be helpful. But again, we bring back to that argument where over the years, even though we have been receiving cost of living adjustment increases, the increases that we're receiving are really just not keeping up with inflation. So there have been numerous different data points out there where since like 2000, for example, we have lost around like 50% or so in like the spending power. So we should have been receiving a lot more cost of living adjustments than what we have been, because they've been changing. They've been kind of manipulating how they calculate the COLAs over the years. So like in the 1980s, if we use the same figures they used back in the 80s or even 90s as they have to been today, the COLAs each and every year would be a little bit higher. And for example, like the year that we received the 8.7% COLA, if they use these same figures for the COLA as they did back in the 80s, the cost of living adjustment would have been much closer to right around 15%. But obviously they're manipulating that, and because of that, we're receiving much less than what we should be. And, that's certainly going to be really hurting people receiving Social Security benefits. Now, of course, in some other news, we have the Super Tuesday coming up today. So by the end of tonight, we're going to have a much better idea of who are, who we're going to be choosing between the two candidates. Most likely, once again, it is going to be Biden versus Trump. That's going to become even more solidified unless something, crazy happens where maybe Nikki Haley ends up beating Trump in numerous states, which I don't see really any chance of happening, of her even coming close to beating Trump in a single state. But according to CNN, the beginning of the end of the 2024 presidential primaries start Tuesday, when President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are expected to all but clinch a rematch of their 2020 contest 8 months ahead of the November general election. There will be contests in 16 states on this year's Super Tuesday, with voters going to the polls in every time zone in the continental U.S. from Alaska and California to Colorado, Minnesota, and North Carolina. Speaking of Colorado, of course, Trump recently won his case in the Supreme Court where he's allowed to stay on the Colorado ballot, so good news for him there. And by the time it's done, Biden and Trump are both expected to have racked up large numbers of delegates, and showdowns will be in place for critical congressional seats and powerful governor's mansions. They go on to say that barring a stunning upset, actually multiple stunning upsets across the country, Super Tuesday is looking like the end of the road for Nikki Haley. So what comes next? While Haley has said she would stay in the race through at least Super Tuesday, she has not hinted at an exit. Candidates rarely do, but if she is swept by Trump, her stated rationale for her campaign, being competitive, will pretty much disappear. The former president is widely expected to mathematically clinch the nomination with 1,215 or more delegates by the end of the month. So once again, by the end of today, I definitely expect Biden to win all the states that they're going to be voting today, and I definitely expect Trump to win all the states. So not much of a point for Nikki Haley to stay in the race at that point in time. And if I were Trump, I would, stop bashing Haley, stop bashing the voters who are going for Haley, and really try to consolidate that middle vote, those independent voters, or those voters who are choosing Nikki Haley over Donald Trump. Trump needs to win over those voters. He needs to win over as many voters as he can, because in November, once again, it looks like it's going to be the rematch of Trump versus Biden. And for Trump, there's going to be a lot at stake, because it's not going to be a case of him just becoming president or not becoming president. For him, it might actually be a case of being the next president of the United States, or ending up in prison, perhaps for the rest of his life. But let me know your thoughts in comments below on that. If the election was held today, are you picking Trump, or are you going to be picking Joe Biden? But that's all we have for today's video. I certainly hope that you enjoyed and found value out of it. If you did, again, I would greatly appreciate if you could give this video a like. Consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already, and I will see you in the next video.